So when it comes to design, while we can leverage on systems and leverage on the science of things and everything technical about it, I also think that one thing we should never leave out is the human part of things. All right, the core interactions with everything we create as designers, as artists, whatever it is we are it's people that it's humans that will interact with it. And so in product design there are things around what people will call empathy and all that. Yeah, I think that there should be that human factor with everything we're designing and with everything we're creating for people. We're people creating for people, and regardless of whether the things we're creating are owned by brands and are owned by companies and owned by systems and governments and all these things, we shouldn't forget the part of designing for humans, because yeah, it is for humans. Design plus illustration equals designstration.
Good day, everyone. You're welcome to the Designstration Podcast. Ufot Ubun. I'm your host, and today I have with me a multi-talented designer. Man, it's really good, really, really good. It's no exaggerations. Check his work out; it's really good. He's a lead designer at where he works. It's really brilliant. I've seen his work. He's awesome. He's also an illustrator, and nobody can actually best introduce someone more than they can introduce themselves. So I'm just going to open the mic for him to just do his thing. Give us. Fiyin, over to you. Tell us, who are you, sir?
All right, hi everybody. My name is Fiyin. I like to go by Finn sometimes. I'm a brand identity specialist and illustrator as well. I'm currently head of design at Check DC, a multidisciplinary creative agency, digital transformation agency, actually, in Lagos, Nigeria. We're committed to rethinking everything and rethinking how brands and products are experienced. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. Like I said before, I design brand identities. I do illustration on the side. Well, not a lot of people know about me, but I'm also a pastor. I'm a singer. I'm a pianist. I'm a lot of things. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Let's count. Brand identity specialist,
Uh,
illustrator, right? Pastor, singer, pianist. All right, that's great. That's great. I need to really rethink my purpose. Thank you for all of those. Getting to know you, Finn, how's the journey been for you as a brand identity specialist? How long have you been designing?
okay, so I think I usually lose counts, but I always like just track back. So I started designing in 2015. So I'm guessing that's about 7 years now. They're about like 7 years
Yeah.
plus. But I started brand identity design in 2018, right? So what I'd been doing before then was just flyers and cover arts, all those things, right? And then 2018 was when I started doing brand identity design, and ever since then, yeah, it's been my forte. It's been my baby. Then I picked up illustration about a year plus ago, and yeah, that's pretty much my career history so far. I became senior designer at Check DC in 2020,
Hmm.
and 2 years down the line, I'm head of design now, and it's been God, it's been good.
Hmm.
um yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any core highlights from my career so far to pick out. How has it been for me as a brand identity specialist? I like to think that aside my personal growth, the industry has really shifted a lot from what it used to be.
Okay.
um when I first started, all I was pretty much seeing were white people posting and doing brand identity illustration, brand identity design on Instagram and on Behance and all that. But between then and now, a lot of African and Nigerian designers, particularly,
Hmm.
have taken interest in that, and a lot of people have also risen in their ranks. So yeah, there was a time where I thought, oh, I was one of the people, one of the only people in quotes. But yeah, that was that was like super high minded of me because right now there are a lot of awesome brand identity designers out there
Mhm.
in Nigeria, in Africa, and out there in the world. And I'm like, okay, okay, this is
Hmm.
pretty good.
That's good.
So yeah, that's how it's been so far for me.
That's good. Speaking of brand identity specialist, right? What exactly
Mhm.
would you say you do? What would you say a brand identity specialist does?
Okay, so the reason why I didn't say brand identity designer and said brand identity specialist is
Hmm.
because a brand identity designer will pretty much just design an identity for a brand. So that's
Mm.
everything visual that represents a brand. A business, wants to be identifiable from a visual standpoint, and
Yeah.
also wants to be memorable. So
Hmm.
what they do is they build out a brand identity, and that's what a brand identity designer comes in to do, creates
Yeah.
everything visually for the brand. I'm trying to not mix visual identity, brand identity. I'll just
Mhm.
put everything in one
Okay.
bubble. Yeah, so that's pretty much what a brand identity design creates, all the visual touch points, visual assets for the touch points that the clients or the target audience of a business or a brand
Yeah.
you know would love to engage with its audience with. However, for a brand identity specialist, I like to think it goes beyond just um the design of things, but also the thinking, and sometimes, or some part of it, the strategic interpretation
Hmm.
of it. So I don't currently do brand strategy, but I think I have a good eye and a good mind for interpreting brand strategy into brand identity. So how to not only create visuals that stand out,
Hmm.
but visuals that can communicate, visuals that can resonate, visuals that can pass across a message as subtle as possible, or even as prominent as possible as well.
Hmm.
And that's pretty much why I like to think that I'm a brand identity specialist, just being able to translate strategy into identity that resonates, that is consistent, and that gets the job done. Yeah.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. Now, I, I mean, you just picked up illustration. It's not quite. It's not really as long as you've been doing brand identity design as a brand identity specialist, right? So
Yeah.
illustration is about 2 years ago. Now,
Yeah.
for me myself, right, as an illustrator who also dabbled into brand identity design, I've
Mm.
actually had this struggle, and I feel it's something that even most designers would feel, especially when they do brand identity design and they also do illustrations. They feel this war. Should I give up one for the other? Should I focus on one for the other? Have you ever had that struggle? Have you ever had that struggle?
Yeah, to be honest, when I started doing illustration, right, it was so interesting for me seeing how you could create an entirely new world
Yeah.
using illustration. And I almost actually wanted to pivot, completely, to say, you know what, brand identity, yeah, I'm doing pretty okay with this. I'm going to put you to the side and just focus on, yeah, because illustration in itself is and that's another conversation where I'm hoping we get to,
Yeah.
you know the whole conversation about art and illustration, right?
Okay.
But
Yes.
illustration in itself gives room for a lot of expression um when thinking as a brand identity designer, most times what you're thinking about is systems, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about
Yeah.
consistency, and thinking about, oh, how can this be expanded, how can this be used in different, all those kind of things. That's what you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about. But with illustration, most times you're first thinking about it from a communications and aesthetic standpoint, and
Yeah. Yeah.
a creative standpoint. So how can I create something that expresses communication, or that expresses a thought or an idea in the most aesthetic way, but still able to like pass this message across, right? Because it also needs to look good while being able to resonate with whatever messaging is being put out. And so it was very interesting for me, getting into illustration that way, taking some of the most abstract ideas and
Mm-hmm.
presenting them in a creative form. It was really interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that, if a lot of brand identity designers, start to explore, chances are, yeah, the idea of trying to leverage or to stay on illustration alone, I think it's a
Alone.
temptation that would definitely come up. I think it's definitely, yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm actually going to save that question about art and design for the later future. Let's talk about design. And I like to ask people this question in particular, creatives rather, this question in particular to see their perspective about it. You know, I've asked a product designer, I've asked an illustrator, web designer, everybody. Now, as a brand design specialist, what is design thinking to you?
Okay, just before I answer that question, let me just put this out there.
Okay.
So the fact that I use the term brand identity specialist is what I like to tag myself, right? It's not like it's a I'm not creating a new role
New role.
that, because people really like to jump on titles
Okay.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, in the sense of everything, I am still a brand identity designer. Just so
Mhm.
anybody who's listening to this, I beg,
Okay.
no go, I beg.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
what is design thinking for me?
Yes.
When it comes to definitions, I think some of these things are still a bit more abstract to me. But if I was to describe design thinking as
Exactly.
anything,
I really like it when people explain or describe rather than just give a definition to something. Yeah.
you know,
So just describe.
so I think design thinking is sort of would I say it is having an approach or a mindset about creatively. I'm trying to put my words together. Design thinking. What is design thinking? Design thinking is it's a mindset, right? It's a
Mhm.
mindset that enables one to approach whatever problems that they're trying to solve, whether it be a communication problem, whether it be a visual problem.
Mhm.
It's a mindset that enables one to approach it from a creative standpoint where they're thinking about systems, processes, and also ease.
Mhm.
And man, I'm finding it hard to put the words together, but I think it's something around that. I won't form thought leader on this one. I'm finding it hard to put words together, but it's
Mm.
pretty much about solving problems, thinking about them creatively, um, yeah, from a process system standpoint.
Mm.
That's what I think it is.
It's
That's what I I
okay,
don't
so it could be more of show me your process, right? Rather than just bringing your product down my table. Right, let me see your thought process. How did you come about this thing? How did you arrive at the answer? I mean,
yeah, that's what I think it is. Yeah.
that's that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's talk about art and design. Let's talk
Yeah.
about art and design. Now, the word art is broad. It's big. It's big,
Mhm.
right? Okay, go on. Give me, Finn. What's art to you? What's art?
Art is any form of expression, from the mind. That's what I think art is.
That's
Whatever
beautiful.
form, yeah, an
That's
expression of
actually
the mind.
beautiful. This is my first time hearing arts in this. Let me use this word minimalistic way, and it's just there. It's really just there. Wow. Any form of
Yeah.
expression from the mind.
Yeah.
Then what's design?
Design design is I'll refer to the definition I was trying to give to design thinking.
Okay.
Design is pretty much is also an expression of the mind, but in a more many times a more systematic, a more process based and cognitive I'm trying to see or practical um approach towards solving problem, right? So I
Hmm.
think design and this is moving it away from anything visual, just from a design standpoint.
Point.
I
Yes.
think it is approaching a problem um through process, or is an expression of thoughts, using process, systems, and practical procedures. That's what I really think
Okay.
design is. If I was to break it down a bit further, I would
Mm-hmm.
say when approaching design, or when you're thinking about designing something, or when you think about the design of a thing,
Yeah.
things that come to mind are, first of all, the initial thoughts or
Yeah.
the initial ideas, right? But these ideas
Mm-hmm.
come to life through systems, through processes, and through practical, moving things around. Like, it's different from art in the sense that art is just an expression. Art
Hmm.
can be organized, it can be
Yeah.
systematic as well. But design in itself is not just an expression. It is systematic. It
Hmm.
has process. It has a flow.
Hmm.
This to this to this to this. Put this and this together.
Yeah.
Um, there are procedures to design, and that's what I think the difference, or that's what I think design is
Hmm.
as compared to art.
Art. Okay. So if I get $1 for every time I'm asked this very question, I'll be asking now. Um, I should be rich. Like I really should be because Finn, I've literally I really got to the point where there's a way you get asked a particular question over and over and you feel like, do I really even know this thing? I'm illustrating or maybe doing a flyer or anything, and I get to ask, is this design or is this illustration? Now, I may be drawing, right? I may literally be illustrating, but I know what I'm doing. It's not just illustration. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm actually trying to, let's say, my invitation flyer, right? Invitation template. Yes, I illustrated the illustrations we have there, but the process of putting the logo here, putting the other ones here, putting this here, putting that here, that was me actually designing. So should someone steps in and say, this thing you're doing, is it design? This thing you're doing, is it illustration? My question to you now, Finn, is when would you say this is illustration and when would you say this is design? Even when we do have illustration in that which you're designing.
Mm. Okay, so I think the answer to that question would be taking things back a little bit to design. Now,
Okay.
when we bring design to a more visual context, right?
Mhm.
You see, it is creating visual assets or creating visual things using process, using or taking a thought and expressing it visually using process, using what are the other words the buzzwords I was throwing around before? Basically a systematic approach to expressing a thought
Thoughts.
visually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to design from a visual sense, there are
Mhm.
different expressions or different ways it can be expressed.
Yeah.
So there is what you call graphic design or brand design in any way.
Yeah.
You can see it in motion design.
Mhm.
I also like to think illustration is actually an expression of design as well,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
they're not, for me, they're not two separate entities or two separate existences on their own. I think that
Mhm.
they're actually, illustration is an expression of design in the sense that it is a form of visual design, right? And it's being expressed, using lines, using shapes, using color,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there is a process to it, right? So, let the hand be this size as
Mhm.
compared to the wrist. Let the this be this, and
Mhm.
just like we know with every other form of design, we can see overlaps between different expressions of design. So you can see an overlap of brand design and motion design. You
True.
can see an overlap of information design and motion design. You
Mhm.
can see an overlap of product design and motion design, right?
Yeah.
Because these fields in themselves, why they may have distinct characteristics or distinct approaches to them,
Mhm.
they are still forms of expression, right? Forms of
Mhm.
expression using
Yeah.
process and a systematic approach to them. And so that's what I think it is with illustration. I think illustration is not in itself different from design. I think it
Design.
is an expression of design regardless of whether you're combining the illustration with text or whether you're combining the illustration with imagery or whether it's just a nice illustration. I still think is an expression of design. It's
Design.
you can maybe illustration design, however you want to call it. It's less about the terms and more about the actual system to things. And illustration, I think, is still an expression of design. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I'd like to get your thoughts. What do you think about it?
I've always seen illustration to be a different entity entirely from design,
Okay.
and I used to see it that way, at least. But when I came to the point where I started doing brand identity design for clients, and I realized that illustration actually requires design knowledge, basic design knowledge. It does require basic design knowledge. And it got to a point, it became so hard to be able to separate one from the other. It became really hard to separate one from the other. In fact, just recently, I fully discovered that truly illustrators are actually designers as well. I
Yes,
mean,
they are.
it's just recently that they're actually designers in some sense, because it feels like it feels like noodles, spaghetti. It's like they're all joined together. That thing, you just
Yeah.
can't pick one out or pick the when illustration here, design here. So and illustration is very expressive, very expressive. Of course, I know that, and that gives an edge in some sense. And this is not in any way to try to say maybe visual identity designers or brand identities are not expressive. No, but illustrations, right? When you're doing that illustration, and it has this expressiveness that it brings. Just like
Right.
you said, art is that is being able to express, right? That
Yeah.
any form of expressive expression.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about illustration and design, when is this illustration? When is this design? I like to target in this sense that there's this image that has really trended the internet. It's about two people standing from different points of view. Then they're looking at this one is looking at this same number. You're seeing a 9. The
A
other person
nine,
is
and the other person's seeing a
is seeing a 6. Right? Both are correct. Right? Both from their own perspective, they're actually correct. So if I'm standing on the platform of an illustrator, I can actually choose to see illustrations as design, and I can also choose not to see illustration as design. If I'm also standing from the platform of a designer, I can choose to see illustrations as not design, and I also can see it as illustrators as designers, and also can see illustrators as non-designers. So I think it's quite controversial. At the same time, it's something that can be understandable. It's something that's understandable at the same time. But it's like I would just leave it at it's that spaghetti, it's that noodles. It blends. Yes, you just have to dabble into it to know it. Now,
So
yes, go on.
okay, yeah. What I really think about it is just like I said before. I think in approaching illustration, yeah, and
Yeah.
that was I'll still get back to the initial thoughts that I had. In
Mhm.
approaching illustration, there's process to it.
Yes.
There is a creative thinking or a design thinking approach,
Yeah, that's true.
right? And that's one of the reasons why I separated the difference between design and art, as art is just an expression of the mind, right?
Mhm.
While design is the expression of the mind or a thought, but using systems, processes, and all these other things, right?
Mhm.
And what I think illustration is illustration is that soft spot, or is a really good place where art and design meet, because there is the artistic side.
Mm.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
artistic side to illustration, right? it
Yeah.
has to it has to be good, it has to have flair, it has to pop. There is the combination, and generally I think design in itself has an artistic um system to it, right? It's a
Mhm.
lot of buzzwords I'm throwing around. For instance, color theory with visual design,
Yeah.
right? While there is the science behind it, there is the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow.
And
While there's
green. Yeah.
the science of tertiary colors,
Yeah.
there's also the artistic part of it, where you can mix a primary color and a tertiary color, and it looks good,
Yes.
it is
True.
expressive, it
Yeah.
pops,
Yes.
right? There's also the whole idea of color blocking, using two colors that may not necessarily sit next to each other
Mhm.
on any color system, but they
Yeah.
look good.
But they still look
That's the
good.
yeah, that's the
That's
artistic side
mm.
to design. So I think illustration is now that expression of design that leverages on art and design very much, in the sense that while there is the system to it, there is the approach. There's this illustration system that I did recently, an isometric
Oh.
based illustration for a
Yeah.
client, right? And I
Mhm.
realized that I had to use grids, I had to use lines, I had to make sure that the angles were right. I had to make
Mhm.
sure that that was the process part of things. That was the
Mhm.
systems part of things. But however, I also realized, oh yeah, this thing has to pop. The way the arrow is coming out of the phone, it
Mhm.
has to be nice. It has to look good. It has to look clean. And this is
Yeah.
beyond angles and measurements and all that. That's the artistic part of things. So I think what I think is that art and that illustration pardon me, that
Hmm.
illustration is an expression of design that is very artistic, or that can be artistic in its nature and its expression. But yeah, that's generally what I think about that. Now, the initial thoughts that I wanted to sort of weigh in on
Hmm.
was the difference between uh digital art
Yeah.
and illustration.
All right.
Yeah, so that one is something that I don't know how to blur the lines. I don't know where the lines are, or it's been one of the things that has boggled my mind for a while. When do you look at something and say, "Oh, this is digital art," and
Hmm.
nah, this is not illustration, even if the digital art is vector based, or even if
Okay.
it uses lines. Yeah, so it's been super confusing for me. But do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. So, digital art itself has actually been tagged, sometimes has been tagged as a particular, um, a particular, I don't want to just say type, but kinds. Say, for instance, now we have kinds of living things, right? We have the human kind, right? We have fish, that's the
Hmm.
kind. Okay. So, digital art actually has also been tagged its own kind in the sense that, say, I'm an illustrator now, and which I am. And now, for instance, now, which field of illustrations do I want to um, specialize in now? So, okay, game industry, educational sector, right? Or background artist, concept artist, character designer, right? You see these different fields. Now, digital illustration sort of has its own kind, its own, more like a job description to say, okay, I'm a digital artist. It's different from when you say I'm an illustrator, or something of that sort. So it has all kind of had that, let me say, rank. Now, coming to saying, when is this illustration? When is this digital art? How can I feel it? I would go back to my noodles. I really would go back to my noodles. It's just this bowl of spaghetti. It's just this bowl of noodles. But truly, yes, there's always there's always a different. We can always spot the difference, because there are some times that, I mean, not sometimes, there's a whole lot of time whereby artists have done hyper realistic artwork
Yeah.
digitally, right?
Hmm.
Will I call that an illustration? This is beyond. I mean, of course, it's a digital work. It could be pixel based, it could be vector based, but this is high. This is like, I've seen works that blew my mind. I'm like, there's no way you did this on computer. Not be the same laptop I get, right? No. I've seen works that blew my mind, and
Yeah.
it's so real that if the artist did not specifically say this was done with social software, I would really say this is real life work. So
Wow.
when is it digital art? When is it digital art? When is this illustration? And there's this concept. There's this concept that has hovers into the, it's just hovering the internet. And I really like to clear that air, that when we talk about illustrations these days, people just think about vector illustrations. You have the leg, the hand, or it's the plant, or it's the cute elephant, or anything you can, it's people just have that concept that that's illustrations. It's bigger than that. It's really bigger than that. And I really feel maybe that's why there's no single specific definition to design, to art, to illustration of this stuff. But it's just broad. I myself, who is an illustrator, I really can't say this is when this is digital art and this is when this is illustration, because sometimes these things are interchangeable. They really are. Do you have
Yeah.
something to say about that? Let me hear you.
No. I think drawing the lines between them, just like you said, it currently is a big bowl of spaghetti, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of things overlap, a lot of things touch each other, so it's hard to draw the lines between them sometimes. I think maybe one of the differences would be, um I don't know, this is just me just spitballing here, but I
Okay.
think maybe one of the differences might be the medium, right? So whether it is just like you said, pixel based, or
Mm-hmm.
vector based. But
Vector based.
I don't know. I think maybe it's a conversation we can open up online and sort of get thoughts on that and see
Honestly.
if there is a general consensus to
Mm.
what it is and all that. But yeah, that was just a thought in my head about illustration.
That's actually brilliant, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you think the line should be drawn? Do you think the line should be drawn? Like, let's not just generalize this thing. I mean, when the 21st century knowledge is increasing, technology is vast, like it's just there. Do you really think we should draw the line? Let's just say this is design, this is illustration, this is digital art. Should we draw the line? Should the line be drawn?
For the sake of for standardization, right, and
Okay.
also um for clarity's sake, also for the future of artists and designers in the world. I think one of the reasons why we have these clear cut lines is just so that there is clarity. There is also standards. There are things that we can also measure. In some sense.
Hmm.
Take for instance, what's the population of illustrators in Nigeria?
Yeah.
What's the population of Nigeria of designers, of brand identity designers? You know, Instead of just having everybody in one big bubble. Oh, how many designers are there in Nigeria? Just for that
Mm.
sake, and also to help with job description clarity for the future. If a company wants to hire a if they intend to hire an illustrator, they don't just put out an ad saying, "Oh, we need a designer," and
Hmm.
we have other forms of design specialists applying and they're not getting job. So yeah, I think the lines need to be drawn, not necessarily to divide people, but in
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
in a sense of way to unite us, because it also helps with collaboration. It's easier to know
True.
when you're reaching out to an illustrator for when you need an illustration based project. It's easier to
Hmm.
collaborate with a digital artist for maybe something that requires that specialty, right? So yeah, I think the lines should be drawn, but not necessarily for the sake of division, but for the sake of
Mm.
standardization and in some way collaboration as well.
That's great. Funny story, right? Um, Artist, general word, quite generic. I'm an artist, right? And I think one is pronounced differently when the letter E is added to it. I think but it's the
Yeah.
artist, right? Okay. So do you draw? Yes, I draw. Of course, we don't say I'm a drawer. We don't say I'm a drawer. We say I'm an artist. Um, what do you do? I'm a charcoal artist. Specification. Now I know where you're coming from. Specification. I'm a charcoal artist. Oh, I'm a pencil artist. That's what I used to draw. That's how I do my draw. I'm a hyper realistic artist. You see, this it's now you're narrowing it down to something. So I used to think of it this way. Digital artists are those who actually draw digitally. But now I have a friend, Olamide, who actually draws both digitally and traditionally. Okay, that's another one. Traditional artist. It's just it's just too much. It's just broad. So digital artists does digital art. Illustrators do illustrations. Okay. When will I say so? Have there been instances where illustrators do their illustrations and someone say that's a digital art? Of course, yes. Has there been cases where a digital art does his digital art and a digital artist rather does his digital art and someone sees that digital art and say that's an illustration? Of course, yes. So truly, back to what you said, let's draw the line for standardization.
Yeah.
Make we give people cap, we then get let's really give people
Yeah.
rank. Let's stamp them. So okay, this is it. This is your field.
Yeah. So I think just this is a general thought. I think a lot of people are too much more concerned with titles and titles and tags
Mm-hmm.
than they are really about specializations and skill set, right?
Yeah,
And so yeah, with the growing increase in skills and all that, there is definitely going to be a lot of people coming up with new titles. I remember this
true.
one time I saw this guy on his, I'm sorry if you can hear me wherever you are, but I saw it on his Twitter bio,
Yeah.
and he said he's a brand experience designer,
Oh my.
and I was like, what the hell is
Do
a
you do?
brand?
Like, what do you do?
What do you do, right? You know, I've heard people say that they are a brand identity writer, and I'm
Oh my.
like I don't get it, right? So while I'm all for the yeah, let's call things what they are. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody's a digital artist, let's call that digital artist. If somebody is a traditional artist, you can just go by maybe traditional artists, but
Mm-hmm.
they're still both under the umbrella of artists,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
If you're an illustrator who does a more artistic form of illustration, you can call yourself an artist, you can call
Artist.
yourself an illustrator, you can just put it artist, and that's the ampersand,
Mm-hmm.
artist and illustrator, right? When I started telling people that I'm an illustrator, I didn't put senior illustrator, I didn't put junior illustrator, I just said
Mm-hmm.
I'm a brand identity designer and illustrator. I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
brand identity illustrator.
Illustrator. Mm-hmm.
I'm not an information illustrator. You can
Mm-hmm.
just put that. And then whenever you have the chance to express either through your projects or through, conversations, you can then begin to speak to some of the specializations. Oh, I specialize in information design, or I specialize in information illustration.
Mm-hmm.
I specialize in digital art, or I specialize in an artistic form of illustration. And some of these things are not things you might need to say.
Yeah.
There are things that people will see through your work,
Works. Yes, that's
right?
true.
So yeah, I think we as an industry, we need to, not be too tied to titles and tags
True.
and ranks and all these things. Although I am for it, I think it's important that we have them, just like I mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
for standardization,
Standardization. Yeah.
for
Collaboration
collaboration.
purposes. Yes.
Yeah, but I beg, let's calm down
See,
a bit.
see, coming up in 2018, when I started of digital art officially, there was one particular title that actually it was quite unclear. It was concept artist. I was like, what do they do? And I look at their. Then I was, I they were actually there were many of them on what's this thing, Art Station. So I was like, then I checked their work. I'm like, these things you guys draw background, you guys draw. Sometimes you people, of course, the way you do is different, but what's in the concept? It can be really confusing. It truly it can be really confusing.
Yeah.
It really
So
can
I
be
think
confusing. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think for some specializations, and this one I can give some form of allowance to.
Yeah.
Some specializations are also particular to certain industries, right? So I believe, like, in, let's say, in a film and maybe game industry, a
Yeah.
concept art
Okay.
might be something that really exists, or that really, is an important role there.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you bring it to a different context, let's say you bring it to a brand context, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, a concept artist is not necessary, like, it's
True.
not something that
That's
will come.
true.
So I can
That's
give an
true.
allowance to some of those things where different industries have different requirements, or have
Mm-hmm.
different specialized needs,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where some of these titles may come. Like, for instance, a VFX artist,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
yeah, those are
True.
very important to certain industries
Industries.
and
That's
certain,
true.
you get, and
Mm-hmm.
they might also overlap with other industries as well, because I know a 3D artist or a VFX artist might be also necessary in
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in a brand based industry, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe we're working on brand projects, and we need to do some VFX for that
Yeah.
and all that. But at the same time, it's like I said, it's needed for the sake of collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
just so I know this is who I need, or this is what I need to
Yeah.
work with
Yeah.
for this to be done. So yeah.
That's great. You know what? Enough of this illustration talk. Make it no really knack brain. Let's talk about work life.
Yeah.
Clear my throat. Let's talk about work life. Fin. Fin.
Yeah.
Work life. Work life.
Yeah.
Morning, an illustrator, a designer, it's on the laptop. It's like, we pray for our daily bread, but this time around now, we really try to pray for our daily laptops. It's this, it's that, it's this. Work life. And it's not life work or it's work life. Finn, share your thoughts.
Hmm. So everything I'm going to say now, I'm going to say also helping myself because I know I haven't sort of like figured out the complete balance yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's something that I think as you grow in life, you have to keep modifying and adapting
True.
to yeah, because where you were 2 years ago is not where you are today, and the same routine can't work. That worked then won't work now.
Mm-hmm.
But I must say this, that there isn't a one fits one how do they say, how does that phrase go, a one fits all formula
Mm-hmm. My
to
way or
work
the
life.
highway. Like it's either my way or
Yeah,
the highway. Okay. Yeah.
so it's basically work life balance has to do with um knowing, or in summary, working hard and playing hard, right? And
It's a nice ring.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah, you should be able to find that balance. A lot of us are very, 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 very much tied to our work, either because it is where we get money, and we get a livelihood from,
Mm-hmm.
or either because of that, or you're just so passionate about the work, you are a perfectionist, you're always glued to your work, or for a lot of people, a lot of designers who hate to admit, you know it is also because you are trying to run away from other things in life. That's why you
Mm.
are stuck with your work. But
Well.
we're not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. you know but you know yeah. So I think, yeah, I think everybody should pretty much figure out how to prioritize. It has to do with priorities, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Um Work takes priorities at some point, but
Yeah.
at the same time, family is important,
Yeah.
love is important,
Yeah.
getting rest is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's why a lot of people have broken up with their babes, because they were
Normal.
too busy.
Hey.
Yeah.
Breaking tables. Okay, yeah. uh, let's fight, Finn. Let's fight.
Let's
Why do you use mouse?
Okay, so
Finn, why do you use
let,
mouse?
let me say it now, that everybody who I ever fought for using trackpad, I am sorry,
Oh my, oh my, oh my.
because for the past year
Uh-huh.
I have been using trackpad.
Confession on the Designstration Podcast 101. Finn just confessed. For the past 1 year, he's been using trackpad. Please give us drum rolls.
I apologize. And I think somebody said something then that I was like, you're in. But now, I believe it. And it's because he said, I have not used a trackpad yet that will
Mm-hmm.
make me abandon the mouse. And
Hmm.
I didn't believe it then. I was like, nothing will make me, until I started using, the one I'm using now. And now I was like, okay, this
Hmm.
person does have a point.
There you go.
But even though upon
Even though
still,
upon still, okay.
even though upon still,
Hey. That's good.
yeah, yeah.
That's good. Fun question, Finn. Amongst all your brand identity, design project, which one would you say that's my favorite?
Hmm. So I think my current favorite is one that I haven't put out yet, but a
Hmm.
lot of people will probably already notice the affiliation I had with the brand sometime earlier this year. Um, so I did a brand identity um for it's pretty much a fintech for kids,
Okay.
and the brand's name is Little. And
Hmm.
yeah, so why it's my favorite is because it was the first time, I think, I was, well, it's not the first time, but it was one of the first projects I did from top to bottom alone, right?
Wow, that's
um
good.
for kids, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'd done a project for kids before, but I did it collaboratively with some of the other guys at the office. But this one I worked on it, from top to bottom myself. So, and it also included illustration. So there was a whole identity system,
Hmm.
and there was another. There was part of the identity system was an illustration library, and a
Hmm.
system as well. And for me, it was really good because it was one of my it is my favorite because the entire thing
Mm-hmm.
was a learning process for me. So I did the project late last year, which was not too long after I had started picking up illustration,
Mm.
and just to see how things developed and how everything came together in that project. It was really good. I'm working on the case study. Hopefully I'll put it out before the end of the year. Definitely I'll put it out before well, I don't know, because we're in September already, but hopefully I'll put it out before the end of the year.
Looking
And
forward to that. Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
yeah.
Fingers
Well, let me
crossed.
put a disclaimer now. If you
Mm-hmm.
guys go to their social media, I'll just stop there. If you go to their social media,
Hmm.
hmm,
Hmm.
hmm,
Hmm. Hmm. That's my
well, I
fault.
won't say more than that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Top notch. Top notch. Talking about top notch. For me as a designer and I was as an designer and illustrator,
Yeah.
when I'm working, sometimes when I get to particular points, especially when I'm doing the coloring, I've seen the inking, right? I'm doing the coloring, doing the gradient, adding the details, the texture. I just get this feeling like, oh more, this is really clean. This is great. This work is really going to be great. And it just fuels my energy. It gives me the energy the more. I really believe you would understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So at that point, I felt like this is it. I'm on cloud nine. At what point, as a brand identity specialist, at what point would you say, or more, this project is really going to be good? Like, this is it. At what point?
Yeah, so for me, it's I think three core things or two. The first thing is, does it look good? Is it fine?
Hmm.
Like that's the first thing. Like this identity has to be
It
fine.
has to be
Like
fine.
from logo to the
Mhm.
system. Like if I see it and I'm like, this thing is mad. Oh. you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first point. I always look out for aesthetics, and yeah. Then the next thing is, how scalable is this system, right? The
Hmm.
identity system.
Yeah.
So if let's say I create a pattern for a brand, and said pattern can work in both prints
Mm-hmm.
and use cases. It can work in small sizes. It can work in large sizes. It can work as a complementary brand asset. It can also work as a prominent in quotes brand asset. And I'm like, okay,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
take
I
it,
mean, we're there. We
yeah,
don't.
take
Yeah.
it on that.
Mm.
Yeah, we're there.
Hmm.
And the final thing is, how easy is it for someone else to handle this? All right, because I think
Hmm.
that's one thing that a lot of designers don't really look out for. Because I've worked with the brand guides that some other people have created.
Yeah.
Maybe some people did identity for a brand, and we have to take that identity and either turn it to motion or turn it to to communications design.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thing like that. Some people haven't made it scalable enough for other people to use, right? It
Mm.
feels like they made it because it's only them that would design for the brand.
Mm. Yeah.
But I always think about that as well. How scalable is this, and how portable in quotes is this identity system?
Mm-hmm.
Can a motion designer take the assets I've created and take all these things, and does it make it easy for him to conceptualize how
Mm.
to bring this to life? Can another designer take the brand guide and take the assets and use that to create new things that would still look consistent,
Mm.
both from an aesthetic standpoint and also from a system standpoint? So did I make the rules
Mm.
clear enough for the other designer, for the other people to take and say, you know what, yeah, this is easy, this is what to do and what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
So once all these three boxes are checked, then
Mm.
I'm floating on cloud nine forever, man.
Oh, well, that's me. That's me. That's me.
Yeah,
Uh
my man.
I've seen one tweet you actually dropped. It's been a long time. It's been a long time you dropped that tweet. You finished the brand identity work before the deadline. I mean, I believe every good designer should actually have gotten to this point. Like, maybe you gave him like, okay, 2 week, 1 week, 2 months, whichever, and 5 days. Fin, you don't wrap this thing. When I saw, anyway, I think that tweet you were like, should I drop? Should I not drop? Should I made a nothing say I don't put effort for this work?
I'm crying.
how how do you meet up with deadline targets? How'd you meet up with deadline target?
Okay, so a quick backstory to that tweet.
Yeah.
That's the project I was doing was actually the assessment that I was given
Mm-hmm.
to that I did before joining Check DC
Oh
where I
wow.
currently, yeah, so I think they eventually saw it, and we had a big laugh about it. But yeah, it was that. So with regards to timelines, so then there was a time where I wasn't really great with it, and I always left things to last minute,
Hmm.
and I always ended up getting burnt out or not fleshing out ideas to their fullest.
Mm-hmm.
But now I started using a project management tool,
Okay.
and the name is Basecamp. So it's very small, but it helps me be accountable, and it also
Hmm.
helps me realize that the client is tracking what I'm tracking.
Hmm.
So we are both
Hmm.
getting notifications that this is what has been delivered this week. It needs to be delivered
Hmm.
this week. So that way, it helps me to stay a bit more accountable to deliverables and to time. So I also use that alongside my personal planner to know, okay, this is when to start sketching.
Mm-hmm.
This is when to look at inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
This is when to flesh out ideas. This is when to now work on the final presentation. Because there's a time where what I used to focus on was I would do all the work, then I would leave the presentation to last minute. Then I realized, oh, the presentation is actually what sells the design. So
Hmm.
yeah, I also intentionally try to factor in presentation design time as well, as the project time. So I also factor that into the timelines I give to clients so that they
Mm-hmm.
realize, like, they know that, oh, it's a realistic timeline. This is
Yeah.
not just for the work, but this is for how I'm going to present it to you. So things that normally would take me like a week to do, I'll maybe add a week and a few more days so that I can have enough time to work on the layout and presentation of said
Hmm.
ideas and design. So yeah, that's pretty much how I do it.
Hmm. I like to ask designers these questions because when we see things from each other's perspective, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Mhm.
And I've asked a product designer. I've asked a data analyst. Let me ask you, Finn. Look at the Nigerian community, right? The design community, art community. What are we missing, Finn? Because it be like saying that every day we dey drag ourselves. It be like saying that every day somebody's fighting, right? It be like saying that every day 15K they trend, something. What are we what are we missing? And I want you to come in from the point of an observer, right? This is not necessarily criticism, right? Just what are we missing? What's the design community missing?
Okay, so I might get a lot of stick for what I'm about to say, but hey, I'm just gonna be honest and plain.
Okay.
Um, One of the first thing I think we're missing is honesty, right?
Hmm.
And this is
Honesty.
in many ways. First of all, honesty in how people are earning, honesty in skill sets, like people just lie,
Hmm.
you know people still work, so I think one thing we're first of all missing
Hmm.
is honesty.
Hmm.
The second thing that I think we're missing is standards or standardization,
Hmm.
right? So I mentioned before, like, things that we should be able to measure, and the reason why I said that is because right now anybody can come up, or because you did one or two UI screens and all
Hmm.
that, you think you are a mid-level designer or a
Hmm.
senior designer,
Hmm.
right? Or somebody who has only worked on passion projects.
Hmm.
Like, let's say you worked on 20 passion projects, but you've never really experienced the constraints of a design brief or of client's expectation. But you think that that makes you a senior designer. I
Hmm.
don't I don't really think so, right? And I think that that's one thing that is sort of missing. And this one is not just in Nigeria. I think it's also generally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Don't
True.
have standards of measurement, standards to say. And it's crazy because other fields have standards, right?
Yeah.
There are, yeah, you can't have worked you need to have worked on certain number of cases or certain number of projects, or served for a certain number of years before you are considered a senior advocate of Nigeria, or
Hmm.
this. And I think that's one thing we're really missing. We're really missing that standards. That way we can all hold each other accountable,
Yeah.
right? We're not hearing that somebody is earning 100K, but when you
Hmm.
see the work the person is doing, you're like, what? We're missing that. And the final thing that we're missing, and I think it's being currently worked on,
Hmm.
but yeah, but I think one thing that isn't completely there is a proper leadership system,
Hmm.
right, for the Nigerian industry, especially because we are still just breaking out,
Hmm.
right? So there is no proper leadership system. Um, it's being worked on. There are different communities, there are different schools, and
Mm-hmm.
all things that are coming up. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's great.
Mm.
And it will just help us get to where we should be, because when there's a proper leadership system, you know, this is not to encourage gatekeeping and all, but there's
Yeah.
some things that would not be allowed in the industry. There's
Mm.
some things that would not, there are examples we can look to. There are people we can point to and say, oh,
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that have been laid down, right?
Mm.
We cannot do the other way. But
Mm.
yeah, a lot of people will hear this and will say, oh, he's just encouraging gatekeeping.
Mm.
And but I don't
No,
think we have.
truth be
Yeah.
told, truth be told, truth be told, you actually just touched something now, and I want you to balance the line for us, right? When do I consider myself a senior designer? Does it really depend on how long I've been in the game, or does it really depend on let me use industry? Does it really depend on how long I've been in the industry? Am I a senior designer because of how much I'm earning, or am I a senior designer because of how many work I've done? Balance that for us.
Okay, so I don't have that standard in mind. Like
Okay,
I don't know if that's one of the things that I think we don't have as an industry, and it would take
okay.
some of the leaders in the community or some of the leaders in the
You are
industry.
one of the leaders, Finn.
My
Big time.
brother,
No,
please,
no, no, no. Finn. Oh my,
see, I wash my hands from that.
oh my.
I just want to design and eat,
Okay.
you know
Yeah.
but it would take a coming together, right, to do
Hmm.
that, because trust me, like, I've met people now
Yeah.
who have been underground for so long, but
Hmm.
they are some of the best designers, and I'm saying people who have been
Hmm.
since
Way.
Leslie's time,
Wow.
since Leslie,
Wow.
since Yorks, all those old people. I know
Yeah.
people, and it would take maybe a coming together to define some of the standards, to say, okay, a senior designer, for you to be considered a senior designer, you must have worked on X number of client projects.
Hmm.
You must have, I don't know. I'm just saying all
Yeah.
these things off
Yeah.
the top.
Yeah.
X number of projects, or you must have done this, that. You must have had this amount of years of experience in an actual working, environment, not only
Hmm.
as a freelancer. However, this is not to bash on any freelancer, because I was a freelancer, but I can tell
Hmm.
you that the difference is clear.
Hmm.
Is there's a difference between when you work directly with your clients and when you are working with the project man. There's a whole difference there. But
Hmm.
I just think that there just needs to be that standardization for that. But I don't know
Hmm.
what it is. I don't know what it looks like. If they invite me to the table to talk, I will do that. If they
Hmm.
don't, I'll be glad to see whatever they come
Hmm.
up with. And yeah,
You
that's
know,
what I think.
you know, there was just, I mean, when I was freelancing, of course I still do, but there was one time it was just plain freelancing. I really used to consider myself after about 2 years. I consider myself this. See, I'm really tight. Like, I mean, not like there was a ring to like senior artist, senior designer. No, I just felt I was really tight until
Mm,
until I got employed to work with this company, and man, these changes they would make, I would be like, on my own, I wouldn't have even been able to vet that this thing is actually not going to be. So
mm,
truly, truly, and the thing, it's just so painful because Nigerians are good. I mean, Nigerian designers are good. I mean, I see our work, they're good. Even someone who's actually just, let me use this term, a newbie, and they
mhm.
and they and they drop a design project or an illustration or whatever, and you'll be like, "Are you sure you just started learning this thing 2 months ago? Like, this is good. Nigerians are good. Nigerians
Good,
are
yeah.
we're really good at this design thing." Okay.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, it just speaks to the amount of talent that we have
Yeah.
in the country. I just think that while talent and skill is good, um there still needs to be some form of process, just like with a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know you've been to this, you've done this, you've done this amount of years and you've gotten here, that's when we can truly say,
Mm.
okay, you are fit to carry out a surgery.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think it would take some time to get there. But yeah, I'm really enthusiastic to see what the Nigerian design industry, does and births, honestly.
Good. Closing thought, Finn. Closing thought. Drop something for us. Just go out of your mind, think out of the box. There's no rules, there's no question. Drop something for us. Closing thoughts.
Okay, so when it comes to design, while we can leverage on systems and leverage on the science of things and everything technical about it, I
Mm-hmm.
also think that one thing we should never leave out is the human part of things.
Mm.
All right. The core interactions with everything we create as designers, as artists, whatever it is we're it's people that it's humans that would interact with it. And so in product design there are things around what people will call empathy
Mm.
and all that. Yeah. I think that there should be that human factor with everything we're designing and with everything we're creating for people, we're people
Mm.
creating for people.
Mm.
And regardless of whether the things we're creating are owned by brands and are owned by companies and owned by systems and governments and all these things, we shouldn't forget the part of designing for humans because,
Mm.
yeah, it is for humans. So, yeah, that's generally that's my closing thoughts. I hope it makes sense. I'm trying to sound deep, but
Oh
I'm not that
my,
deep. Sorry.
oh my. That was, no, I'm not kidding. No, no, no. That really got me. Because I just remember Fiyin the human. That's it. That's your Twitter. I mean, no, no, no. True, true. We're people creating for people. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiyin. Really appreciate it. Thank you. One more time. What's our tagline?
Design plus illustration equals designstration.
Design plus illustration equals designstration. Thank you very much, Fiyin, for creating that time to be on this episode. I really appreciate. I really, really appreciate. Thank you so much. My goodness, man, you have a lot to talk about. You really do have a lot to tell us. Thank you so much. The pleasure has really been mine. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Thank you so much. Cheers, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's episode and thank you for listening. I'll catch you in the next episode. Have a nice day. Bye.